All right, thank you for your patience as we start a little bit late, so we will move through this. We're going to start with the consent items. We have 13 consent items, so they're moved by Councillor Davey. We do need to pull out number 10 because there is an address change for that noise exemption request. So are you moving that with the change in address? Perfect. So any of these items will have to be voted on to be pulled out and questions asked. So how about we just start with what items you'd like to have pulled out? Councillor Gazzola and Councillor Fernandez, I'm guessing both of you are queued in to question a couple, one or two of these.
I have some questions, but I'd like number 13 pulled out separately.
Okay, 13, thank you. And Councillor Fernandez?
Yes. Just a quick question on number 7 on the West Forest Trail, the changes.
Okay, those are the only two. So 7 and 13, all in favor?
Oh,
sorry?
I'm sorry, I have some questions on the 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, we gotta, so all of our consent items now that you want to ask questions on have to be pulled out and voted on. That was a change in procedure. So you're asking for...
When did that procedure change?
It's been a couple months.
Pardon?
Maybe January-ish. That's a guess, though, but it's been a couple months. So 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, 1, 2, and 3, yes.
Okay.
And 13.
Right. Got that one. Anybody else who wants to pull any of these out? Okay, so we're going to vote on 1, 2, 3, 7, and 13 for questions. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Let's deal with, because I know there's some people in the audience maybe that would like to move forward and get out of here. So can we deal with the other items that we're not asking questions on now? They've been moved by Councillor Davey, but just, so we'll deal with all the other items. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right. Councillor Gazzola, you want to cue back in and we can start with item number 1.
Am I up? Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
You know, I just wanted to ask some questions about this travel-wise. I gather it's part of the region. I just wanted to know a little bit more about the who we're contributing this money to and who operates travel-wise. Is it a regional priority? I looked up their website and really couldn't find any information. I mean, we're throwing in $4,500 into the pot. Do we have an opportunity to see where that's going, what's involved?
Questions asked. We're just going to wait for...
Pardon?
Staff's just coming down to respond. Mr. Carmichael?
Thank you. Through you, the Chair. It is a regional initiative that is coordinated at the regional level that the local municipalities contribute funding to support the initiative, the administration they provide.
Do we have any statements of this travel-wise, or who do they answer to, or what are they?
Through the Chair, I'm not sure I can give you all those details. It's a group that we are engaged with that allows us and other municipalities to run our TDM measures on the whole region-wide with the support that they do, as opposed to every municipality doing similar programs. So that's the motivation behind it.
Mr. Reedman would also like to answer.
Through the Chair, so TravelWise also operates in other jurisdictions like Hamilton and Toronto. So they have partnerships with a coordinator body. So the region of Waterloo is our coordinator that we partner with. We get economies of scale through reduced fees for people to participate in the program. So if we were to go alone, we would be paying 2 to 3 times more money to participate in this program than we do by joining the TravelWise program.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about the cost of the program or what's, I just wonder what it is, a little more about the organization that we belong to. Because it's lacking on their website, so.
Mr. Reedman?
So TravelWise operates things like the carpool program, the website-based program where people can log in to find carpool matches. They assist with reduced transit passes for employees that are members of the organization to take transit passes. They assist with programming around getting people to shift their mode splits, so active transportation to work. So they are a travel management association that runs a whole bunch of different programs to shift people from primarily single occupancy vehicles to using other modes of transportation through working with specific organizations to tailor those programs.
But from what I gather, it's something totally to do with the employees. Does it have anything to do with the public and helping them get reduced transit rates and things like that?
Through the chair, as part of our transportation demand management checklist, we have options for condominium developments to participate in TravelWise. So if they engage in a TravelWise contract, they can look at reduced parking requirements through TDM initiatives. So it does require individual organizations to sign up for that, but it does benefit citizens, employees at different organizations as well.
Thank you.
Okay. If we want to deal, we'll just deal with that one then. It's been moved by Councillor Davey. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, Councillor Zola, you want to move on to number 2?
I'm just curious on what's happening with item number 2. I don't, is item number 2 the market?
Market Lane, yes?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to why we're doing this, how big a problem it is. When people shop, do they not drive down there to pick up their groceries sometimes, to bring their vehicles? Is there provision for that otherwise?
Mr. Carmichael?
Yes, through the chair. The laneway itself is very narrow. The sidewalks are flush with the roadway and only defined through a different pavement treatment. And the problems we're having is exactly what you mentioned, is there's a lot of people going to the market and they're using that section of laneway to pick up their goods, and it's effectively jamming up the laneway. It's restricting pedestrian access along the designated sidewalk areas and just causing mass congestion in that area. This was brought to our attention through complaints of people using the area, as well as our enforcement group identified it to being an extreme challenge on Saturday mornings. So in the interest of traffic safety, this is why the recommendation is put in front of you.
Okay. Have we considered closing it off to vehicular traffic in total?
Through the chair, that was considered and looked at. The challenge there is the access we have to maintain for the other businesses along that laneway as well.
This is a challenge. Can it be done?
Our position would be to maintain it as a public roadway as much as possible to serve the public and those businesses, and there are alternatives for people to pick up their goods at the market.
No. Okay. I think if we really wanted to, we could close it off to all traffic except for deliveries. Boom.
Okay. Councillor Marsh?
You know what? I agree with Councillor Gazzola that this would be better to be a pedestrian, mall rather than allow for cars. But we do have the problem of the parking lot for the New City Supermarket that has to be, we have to maintain access for that. That's the main. That's what I see as the main barrier to making that a pedestrian mall. But that would be an amazing, way for us to just close it off. But I don't think there's a solution there at this point.
Councillor Fernandez?
Has there been consideration given to making it one-way so that they can come in and go out, so that you reduce the number of cars that are doing backwards and forwards motions when they're coming out of that new supermarket parking lot? Is that something that we could look at instead?
Through the chair, I can't specifically say if we looked at that in specifics, but that's something certain that could be investigated as well.
Okay.
The issue is allowing the vehicles to stop in the areas which causing the safety concerns. Whether it's one way or two way, I would suggest those same issues would still exist.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Reedman would like to add comment.
Through the chair, it is currently designated as one-way roadway from heading towards the market. So it is labeled as one way. It is quite narrow as well. We looked at it previously. It's only about 4 meters wide, and the issue is cars are actually parking and blocking other cars from passing through the laneway.
It's interesting when you said that. Both the mayor and I raised our eyebrows and say, "What? I think I drove down there the other way." So
Well, it does say in the report it's a one-directional laneway.
Sorry about that, but okay. I guess I get what you're saying. I just wondered if it was something that we had seriously considered investigating. And I guess since we're both, a number of us are looking at each other and saying, "Well, I'm sure I drove down there both ways." I think it would help with some of the movement, but you're right. It won't stop with the stopping and loading all the stuff in the cars.
Go ahead.
Sorry, my follow-up question was, will we be able to get enough enforcement? And what will the backlash be?
Ms. McNeil?
Through the chair, we do have an officer that's dedicated to a parking shift on Saturday mornings, and a good portion of their time is spent down in the market area.
Okay,
so that won't
great.
be an issue.
Okay, thanks.
All right, there's no further questions. It's been moved. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right, Councillor Gazzola, if you want to cue back in, I can.
Sorry.
Number 3.
Yeah, number 3, by the way, it's not Ward 5, is it?
No, it's not. I had circled that as well. It's in Ward 10.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to what we're accomplishing there. I don't know what we're moving traffic from one side of the street to, or we're moving parking from one side of the street to the other. What is that accomplishing, other than we have to change some signs around? Pardon? What do you mean? Is it a one-way street?
So, Mr. Carmichael, do you want to answer? It's not in Ward 5, even though Ward
Thank you.
5 we could take over Ward 10 in the auditorium area, but just kidding. I'll kidding aside.
Did you want to make a
Go ahead.
motion on that?
Yeah, no. Apparently I can't in the chair position.
We've a number of, through the chair in response, there's been a number of public outreach opportunities around the Odd over the last number of years related to the Odd expansion, reconstruction in the area. And we've heard on a few occasions from the residents of Dumfries Ave, the challenges of, obviously there's a number of cars that park there on Ranger nights. And currently, the way having them park on the south side and prohibiting parking on the north side has them all directed towards the auditorium. So at the end of the game, all the cars typically are going out towards Krug Street, towards Victoria Street to exit the area. And what that has resulted in is a lot of cars turning around in private driveways. So it was identified to us by a number of the residents how that's obviously not ideal, and the suggestion was, why don't you just flip the parking to the other side of the street so that at the end of the game they're at least pointed in the direction that get them out of the neighborhood without having to turn around in driveways. So as a result of that, we did the survey, and you'll see that we do have a slight majority support to flip it. There's no real impact on parking supply, it's just which side, and the residents feel that it's going to be less disruptive for them at the end of major events at the auditorium.
So now they're going to be parked on what I call the west side?
That would be your east side. The expressway
I have a
side.
map here that has the end going up there, that way. And
On the right-hand side going up away from the auditorium is where we are proposing the parking to now be permitted.
Okay, so you want to direct them towards Krug Street?
Exactly.
All right. It just didn't seem like a...
They're going to be going out Krug Street because there'll be less traffic. If they go towards Sterling, they're going to be competing with the traffic coming out of the parking
Yeah,
lot
except
of the auditorium.
Except those the one that want to turn around.
Yeah, so sometimes it's good to share the wealth of parking on one side and switch it to the other. So, okay, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, item number 7, Councillor Fernandez.
Sorry. Certainly, one of the challenges we continually hear about is parents parking in front of schools. So now we're actually going to permit parking in front of the school, which creates a lot more challenges for people who are walking and crossing at this or crossing towards a school. I'm a little bit puzzled as to why we're reversing something that is what we're trying to do all across the city.
Thank you. In response, a fair question. We've had a number of meetings. We've had some meetings with the schools in that area, with the parents of the area, and it's been identified by the parents that there's a lack of ability and space to drop their children off or pick their children up from school. So after those meetings, this regulation was put in, I want to say last year, after a survey of the residents. And through discussions with the parents, the school board, we were looking at options to open up more available areas where parents can drop and pick up their children. This area was determined as an area of low impact. It's not the actual school frontage, but more to the side, and it's not really on home frontages. So we tentatively at the time said, well, we can consider reopening up this area along West Forest Trail, which won't directly impact residents, still maintain safe operations, and provide a little more stopping areas for parents. And that was agreed upon to follow up on. From that, we issued a letter to the residents in that area advising of this proposal, and we received no negative feedback on it. So as a result, on the overall picture of accommodating the drop-offs and pickups around the school, we feel this was a positive move.
Do you see that this may open up another can of worms where it comes to the whole parking in front of schools? And
Just to clarify, this isn't in front of
No.
the school. It's at the side, right, of the
Yeah.
school?
Yeah.
Okay, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make that clarification. Continue.
do you still see, I mean, the question still remains, because we have other schools that have sort of, and will have actually the Grow School that I'm thinking about when it's opened, will have both frontage on Thomas Lee and an unnamed road as yet. And I've expressed concern that we're going to have parking all the way around that corner in the future. So if we start with this one, is it opening up a can of worms for others?
Through the chair in response, fair question. And my response would be that, well, we have the general provision and we try to be uniform in our application of our regulations around every school. Each school is a little different. And we do have some school frontages where we do allow the parents to drop off and pick up. Having said that, staff do review each location on its own and on its own merit from a safety perspective. And the recommendations we put forward have considered that. So it's a recognition that each location, each school site is different, and we're trying to make the best of a bad situation, I guess is one way to put it.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Reedman would like to. Nope. You're good?
Okay.
Sorry.
Just a quick comment. I would be interested to see the outcome of this. I know we do that with all our traffic calming and stuff, but it would be interesting to do sort of an unofficial survey and see how, if this has alleviated some of the safety concerns that the parents had raised with staff. If that's possible.
If I could respond, are you asking that we survey the parents and how they're feeling with the new operations?
I think it probably would be better if one of our staff is sort of out there a couple of times in different periods through the school year, just to see how this is functioning.
Happy to do so.
Okay, thank you very much.
The only note I want to make on this one is, according to the map, and it might not be exact, You have the parking being reinstated really close to that median. I'm assuming that's a median. You'll keep it a distance away that cars can still get through and pass by, right?
Yes, forgive me, through the chair, yes, in response.
I figured as much. I just thought I'd
Yeah.
make sure. Okay. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. All right. Now we have number 13, the feeding wildlife provision. Councillor Zoll, you have questions?
I've received several calls about this, and I really don't know that much about it, but it's from people who back onto natural areas, and they're somewhat unhappy with where we seem to be going. So I'm just wondering what kind of a research have we done on this? As an example, what if people don't abide by this bylaw, what happens?
Ms. McNeil?
So we have conferred with both the Humane Society and the Ministry of Natural Resources, and that's where we've gotten the information that we've put into the report, where they support this in stating that feeding wildlife is not encouraged, and you don't want to attract them into residential neighborhoods because they become not only a nuisance, but in losing their fear of humans can often end up in confrontation with domestic pets such as cats and dogs. So in terms of how we're going to address it, it would be on a complaint basis, similar to what we do with everything else. And I think our goal would be to educate residents as to why it's not a good idea and try to obtain compliance. And, us issuing a charge would be an absolute last resort.
Have we talked at all to the public that might be involved, or has there been any public engagement on it? Is
Through
it,
the
is it
chair.
needed? Is it, pardon?
Sorry, through the chair, we haven't done any public engagement on this. What we did was we went to the two organizations that would have the best knowledge on this type of thing and spoke to them in regards to what their thoughts and support would be on this. So I do know that people enjoy feeding wildlife. I just don't think that they always understand the consequence of what happens when they draw them into the city. And our position is that we've received an increase in complaints, and we really don't have a mechanism to help people deal with it.
Okay, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with what you're saying and where you're going, but I'm just finding though that there are a lot of people that don't know about this and are getting upset, and somehow education is what we need here, and instead we're just passing another bylaw. I just wondered if there was any merit in any kind of public engagement.
Diana, did you circulate this to all members? Yeah. So we do have an email on our desk with regards to this. I forgot to bring it up at the beginning. That supports the ban of feeding wildlife. And having said that, I've received a couple emails just this morning from residents. Obviously, it's made the media somewhere because people are talking about it. So I heard a couple that are opposed. So. Just to that point. A couple more questions, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. So just carrying on with the question that Councillor Gazzola has asked, I'm more in the mindset, obviously, bylaws sometimes with stronger language also help to inform and educate the public as well. And I'm sure that we have been trying to do the very same, and advising that it's not always best to, feed wildlife. Something like this would kind of put into more solid terms, I'm assuming.
Through the chair, yes, it would. And it would just, again, we're not looking at issuing charges. We're looking at educating people and obtaining compliance. But when we do come up against people that are resistant and refuse to comply or to stop doing it, we have no mechanism to move forward with that, which then could leave a neighborhood in
I agree. And by having such a bylaw, I'm assuming we will probably have some literature, if we don't already, advising the public of right type of conduct.
Sorry. You can just leave your mic on, Gloria. I think all the questions are going to come to you.
Through the chair, we will do some type of education around that, and we'll certainly work with communications if this is passed by council in order to educate the public and get this out there.
Apologies if this was already asked. This would relate to feeding ducks, say at a pond or Victoria Park, something similar?
Through the chair, feeding ducks is already prohibited through our parks bylaw.
Right.
So this would just be specific to private property. So if people are luring, and we've had that complaint where people have 20, 30 ducks coming to their property every day to be fed, that would prohibit that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez?
This is not so much of a question, but a point of clarification. I've spoken to Josh Shea, who monitors our Huron Natural Area, and it is a great concern that the comfortableness that these wild animals start to feel when residents put food out, and it's attracting everything from skunks to raccoons to deer. It really brings in the concern of rabies and what happens if both people and dogs are bitten and cats by a rabid wild animal. And there is a huge increase in rabies right now in the Hamilton, Dundas area. So I know that it seems a bit heavy-handed maybe to some councillors, but I think it's really critical that we start getting this message out that this is not acceptable. As we grow into green areas, further green areas, we're going to be infringing on some of their home and habitat as well. If we feel inclined to feed them, maybe we should go where it's appropriate to do that, and that would be a zoo.
Any other questions? Anybody want to make comments? Nope. I just quickly want to say that it is obviously new to the community, and I understand where staff are coming from with this, but we do have the luxury this time around of 3 weeks between committee and council. So I think it's a decision that we ultimately will make at council, and we can listen to the community and any input that they have between now and the 29th of August in order to hear the input. I know I received an email from a call that came into the office this morning, so I still have to touch base with that resident before our council meeting. So I encourage everyone to do that in the meantime, because we do have 3 weeks' time. Councillor Gazzola?
No, that's the only reason I wanted it out separately. I thought we should have a...
Sorry?
I say that's the only reason I wanted it out separately. I thought we should have a little discussion here today, and people do now have 3 weeks before the next meeting to make their thoughts known.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Mayor Verbinovic?
Yeah, just on that, because I noticed it's also generated some social media activity today, probably because of the article as well. And it may be worthwhile for our staff, even in not a formal consultation process by any means, but maybe to have like a half-page sort of, here's what we're doing and why kind of thing that they can just put on the internet and share through, Twitter and Facebook and so on, so people could at least get a little more informed in advance of us dealing with it at council.
So you're suggesting like maybe a little executive or even just this report dumbed down?
Yeah,
maybe
not even the whole report, just, yeah.
Condensed into why we're doing this.
Yeah, maybe work with comms on
Should
that.
be. I'm seeing nods. Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we'll still take a vote. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay, so I think that's all of our consent items. We're now moving on to school traffic safety changes for the 2016-2017 school year. Mr. Carmichael, did you want to introduce the item?
Yes, thank you. I will, through the chair to the committee. Just a quick synopsis. Annually, we report back to yourselves for an annual update for the new school year. In this case, for the 2016-17 school year. Two small changes, or three small changes we're recommending, based on challenges and identified concerns that have been raised at the intersection of Frederick and Lancaster, and the lack of activity at Frederick and Edna, which also has been added, a pedestrian refuge island has been added there. We're recommending that the crossing guard from Frederick and East, Frederick and East be relocated to Frederick and Lancaster. The existing location at Frederick and East is very low use and has the new pedestrian island to assist crossings there. Having said that, staff will monitor Frederick and East going forward to ensure that safe crossings are still occurring there and consider reinstituting a crossing guard should it be required. The second crossing guard location we're recommending a change for is the current one at the location of Victoria and Opperton be relocated to Ottawa and Wilderness. At Victoria and Opperton, again, the region have installed a pedestrian refuge island in that location, and the students now do not have to cross down at Opperton to get towards the school. They can go down towards the school and get to the school much more easier. So that's the recommendation there. The final one is the school bus loading zone for Queen Elizabeth School be established in Hoffman. Long story short, they're currently on the dead end of Highland and experiencing challenges turning the school bus around, and obviously that leads to safety concerns, turning a school bus around at school times. So we're simply recommending a school bus loading zone on Hoffman to accommodate that operation. Happy to answer any questions should you have any.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marsh?
I'd like to move this at the appropriate time.
Okay. Is there any other questions? There's none in the queue. Then so moved. And I will call the question. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you very much. And I neglected to mention early on that items 10, 11, and 12 from the consent items would be coming forward to special council meeting after planning, I think it is, but later today. And then again, we're dealing with the Bill 204 promoting affordable housing, which is also going to come back to special council later this afternoon. So that's the item we are going to deal with now. So there is no staff presentation, so if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask with regards to the report on promoting affordable housing? Councillor Fernandez?
So as I understand this report, essentially what we're doing is we've got some comments and we've been working with our regional housing provider about where we see ourselves going with affordable housing. Is that essentially the crux of this?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay. The consultation guide that you put together, that you added in, are there areas of concern for our staff that were listed in this document, in this discussion guide?
Through the chair, we included the discussion guide as an appendix so that it was clear what the province was asking various agencies and the public. The key piece that we've highlighted in the report in bold, which you would see from each of the questions that they ask, is should the province prescribe each of these details? So how much affordable housing would have to be provided, for how long, what type, etc. Or should they just provide the regulatory tools that the municipality could do that as we wish? And so that's the primary reason for including that as an appendix. Are there any challenges or issues for staff? Through our discussions with the region and Waterloo and Cambridge, it's difficult to quantify at this stage. It's just a first reading, and there's different ways you can interpret what might happen, and it depends on whether or not the province changes the language to be more stronger or to allow us to do something. Either way, there will be additional work in the future. A municipality could then pass zoning bylaws to require certain items, and there would have to be certain monitoring and agreements. Some of that might be sorted out and done with at the regional level, some at the local level. The best answer is it's a bit too early to know.
Okay. So really, this is sort of the first stages of discussion. I know we are reviewing our zoning. Are you hoping that this discussion that's happening at the province and our zoning will sort of dovetail together, that if they are becoming more of a prescribing the zoning, that we will be able to navigate that quicker before everything is completed, or not?
Through the chair, my assumption is probably not, in terms of combining them, or that the timing would work out. Not quite sure exactly how fast the province would be moving with this bill. For the most part, they are moving quite quickly on a number of changes, so it could happen soon. However, as it relates to implementation of this, it's probably going to take some time to work that out at the regional and local level. And then each municipality would probably look at and go through a process to determine what, if any, geography we may want it to apply. And I can see us doing it that way. And it would be as a package, and it would probably be with policies, because you need official plan policies to support it, and zoning bylaw changes. And then you would need a whole process and procedure to figure out how would you have an agreement to ensure that units are kept as meeting the definition of affordable for a certain length of time. I can see it done as a whole package, and we'd have to look at where in the municipality does it make sense. And that's what we're going to have to wait for the final legislation to see.
Yeah, because that would be my concern, is how would you be able to ensure that if the province is prescribing a certain amount of development or redevelopment is to be affordable housing, how do we govern the ability to, say, a 20 townhouse complex to stay affordable if the whole area has a dramatic shift in the housing? So I can see that being some of a challenge. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Councillor Gazzola?
Yes, some of my questions have been answered. I gather that at this point you're just sending off a lot of questions to the appropriate ministry. Have staff taken any position as to where we should be going down the road, or are you still totally open-minded on the whole situation?
Through the chair, I would generally say that there is an open mind going into this. The flavor of any kind of position would be that it would be wonderful if the province could provide more tools to allow municipalities to require or encourage or incent or have more affordable housing happen in our community, because as we all know, there continues to be a strong need and desire for that. What is the primary flavor of some of the commentary and implications that we've included within the appendix of the report is that a lot of the matters and specifics, like a numerical target or exactly what type of units, is usually best done in the regional and municipal context, and not necessarily the province to say that every municipality in Ontario shall have X number. Our region has an action plan for affordable housing, and they've spent a lot of time working with a lot of interest groups and folks and the municipalities to work out what could make sense for our area, and they're on the precipice of implementing more of those actions. And so it makes more sense to do that at the regional level.
Thank you. I wonder if I could just ask you I tried to understand the planning side of it. I'm trying to understand what is affordable, and I go into the definitions. I'm just, if a place is made affordable, it means that it's going to sell for less than market. Is that right?
Through the chair, most of the definition goes back to the provincial policy statement, and Councillor Gazzola is generally correct there's multiple components of the definition. There's affordable home ownership and affordable rental. And generally, if it's less than 30% of the low or the moderate medium income household amount, or if it's rental, it's equal or less than the average market rent of the regional market area, or I think it's 10% less than the average resale price of a home for ownership. And so it kind of depends on the area, right? So an area somewhere in York Region might have a higher amount than here, that might have a higher amount than somewhere in London.
I guess my question, though, is we go down that route, which sounds great. Who picks up the difference? How does that work? If we approve a new subdivision here, does it say that 10% of the properties have to be affordable? Therefore, are they different looking? Are they cheaper properties, or are they equal properties? But there's a differential. Who picks up the differential?
Through the chair, I'm not 100% certain on the question about who picks up the differential. However, a lot of this would have major implications to private development. And so if there was a requirement for a private developer or development in a municipality to provide a certain amount, they would have to provide a certain amount. What it looks like, of course, we would have certain design parameters and specifications, but I don't think there's anything in here about the municipality or someone else contributing, picking up the rest of it. A municipality, or possibly through this legislative changes, the province might direct that municipalities have incentive programs towards those private developments that would provide it. And that can include a range of things, including most of the package of what Council directed us to already look at for our affordable housing incentive phase 2 that we're working on.
All right, thank you. I have some other questions, and I'll follow up with you.
Councillor Marsh?
Thank you, Chair Galloway Sealock. So a lot of my questions have been answered, but I have two of them. First is just wondering about, in this consultation, do you see any indication that they're considering different approaches for two-tier municipalities versus single-tier municipalities?
Through the chair, we haven't seen ideas of that through their consultation discussion guide, though it would depend on what type of incentive might be offered if that were required.
Yeah, and so you're asking for council discussion to guide you in your responses to their questionnaire, correct?
Yes, that's right.
And so I would just point to that as a factor to raise when you're responding to the survey, because it's different. You know, if they are assuming that we are single tier, then it doesn't work as well. And then the second question I had was, how I would be concerned about uptake evenly within a certain region, like ours, for example. How much uptake would there be in our municipality versus, all the other municipalities in Waterloo Region? What would be the provincial guidelines for that to make sure that we don't have a concentration of only affordable housing in concentrated areas?
Through the chair, I would suggest that discussion point is the crux of what is probably going to be discussed in many municipalities, and it kind of leads to that question in terms of the level playing field, or who has to do what. The way that it's worded right now, it says that the province may prescribe the following municipalities that you have to do this, and these other ones may do it. We don't have a list, we don't know, and that's some of the commentary or questions we can ask back. Mm-hmm. Is this going to be everybody has to do this, or is it just someone? What if only one municipality within a region does it and not the others? It's part of the whole discussion and debate.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davey?
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Marsh's concerns are very similar to mine. So in broader terms, I know that the larger responsibility is clearly the regions, but it seems like Kitchener's taken more of an aggressive stance in terms of affordable housing. Is that the case in comparison to Waterloo and Cambridge in particular?
Through the chair, I'd say that's a good question. The region, of course, has the primary two mandates of being a service provider, so some of these changes mean something quite important to them, but also providing the policy direction for affordable housing in our area. Cambridge is pretty active right now on the affordable housing front and working on a proposed community improvement program, and Waterloo has already prepared the report on this matter, and they have a little bit of that within their Uptown incentive package. I would say that many of the local municipalities are really stepping up into this topic and becoming a lot more active than in the past. Where you would normally see this would be more regional level. However, the proposed changes in here are Planning Act changes about zoning and also some Development Charges Act changes. And so that's where it now starts to pull in the local municipalities, since we have that jurisdiction more to deal with zoning than the region does. And so I think that's why you start to see at least the 3 urban municipalities more involved in this particular topic.
Okay, we're sort of in a unique situation too, in that because we're two-tier, we have Waterloo, which we share a long border with, whose property values are also significantly higher average property values in the city of Kitchener. So how do we ensure that between our two cities that the affordable housing is evenly distributed? Because by the definitions you already explained, a technically affordable home in Waterloo would probably be an above average cost home in Kitchener. So logic would dictate that the people that are struggling with being able to afford a home will all end up moving to Kitchener or Cambridge largely. So in the fullness of time, that's not good for balance and equality. So how do we fix that?
Through the chair, I won't profess to have the exact answer of how to fix that. You've pointed out a really good issue and item as to the differences between the different municipalities. That is most likely why it makes more sense to have a regional approach. And so through the implementation of the regional program, if we have the abilities to do these things, the region could identify in more detail what does affordable mean for Waterloo, for Kitchener, for Cambridge, for the townships. And so the number might be a little different, or they might find a way to balance it more if you can do it through that regional context.
Okay. Yeah. I guess I still struggle with it a bit because again, with improving transit, I personally don't really see any difference in affordability between living in Waterloo and Kitchener, because you can live in either and work in either, and it's not like a Toronto hour commute. So I think that's something, in terms of feedback, something we need to keep a careful eye on. I mean, I'm proud of what our lower tier has done, and Councillor Etherington isn't here, but he's been championing this as well. I just want to make sure that the feedback is taken, that we expect all the municipalities to share in their responsibility.
I think we will note that in our response. Thank you.
Councillor Singh?
Yeah, to the earlier concern, so through Bill 204, would that not over time address that issue as well, where obviously if it's certain responsibility ends up being to the municipalities, be it upper or lower tier, to address affordable housing. So equitability would build over time on its own. Will that happen or no? Similar to Councillor Davies' concerns, or do we have to be kind of very conscious of it, ensuring that we're not managing the brunt of the positive responsibility?
Through the chair, I would suggest it's hard to predict, and we should be conscious of it. If the final reading of this, and if it passes whereby the legislation says that municipalities may do this, then there might be some municipalities that would go right at it, and this provides new tools to do things in zoning that you can't do now. Like, there's no way right now that we can regulate in zoning the price or affordability or the cost of a unit in terms of rental or how much it's sold for. These changes would allow that to happen, that you could say that within this development, this is kind of the price that this percentage of units needs to be at, whatever it is, below the market rate. Some municipalities might do that, some may not. And so that's something that we should look at as we see how this legislation evolves and how
so,
it might change over time.
So wouldn't that be automatic if that's the only tool or approach available to us, by automatically setting a certain range in price or cost of a unit, which will definitely be lower than the surrounding area, other municipalities. So then you are creating that, inequitability that Councillor Davey kind of referred to. Based on the review, affordable housing review that we're doing with looking at incentives, working with the development community. So through feedback, do we have an avenue to encourage that this may be a better process?
Through the chair, that you've mentioned one or two possible approaches, and the latter one that you mentioned in terms of going more the incentive route is one option that has been mentioned by the local industry as well as something that might be more preferable, and something that, as we're seeing right now, the municipalities are moving towards doing that.
Knowing that what's in the pipeline right now, and we will have to address this one way or another, and I think we've been mature and responsible in addressing it already well in advance ourselves, is it prudent on us starting to work with perhaps City of Waterloo actively and seeing which direction they will be going, so that we are in sync with our comments and our approach?
Through the chair, I would say yes, and that was one of my initial reactions, and so that's why Lauren reached out to the region in Waterloo and Cambridge to coordinate some discussion and to get together to find out what is their commentary, what is their direction. And so we've done that. We've had that discussion. Waterloo was kind enough to provide us with their report so that we knew before we finished ours the direction that they were looking at. And I think Cambridge is to come, and I think the region is tomorrow is their report as well.
So that is the approach that we're taking, that we're going to provide a more synchronized response or comments?
We are looking at commenting individually, but essentially the municipalities in the region are generally saying a very similar thing. I think in the Kitchener report, we've provided a little bit more of a balanced approach. Waterloo and others are, and even many of the other regions within Ontario that have gotten together to talk about this, are generally going the way of the regional area knows best, enable us to do it, let's do it type of approach. We gave a little bit more of a balanced approach in the Kitchener report, because we did have a similar kind of mindset to some of the questions that have come up in the last few minutes, as to making sure there is a balance within our area, and not just one area kind of shoulders that. And so we're trying to make that point a little bit. Depends if council wants to make it a little bit more specific.
How specific could we get at this point?
It would depend, I would suggest, on how far council would be willing to consider suggesting that the province should take a stronger approach of prescribing areas to definitely do it.
Okay, there are no further questions. I don't believe it's been moved yet. Moved by Councillor Fernandez. Are there any comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And I believe that concludes community and infrastructure services. We have 5 minutes or so before we start planning. 5 minutes or